Good evening. It is 5:30 on Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. Thank you for being here for this interim meeting of New Hanover County Schools. I would like us all to stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Ms. Bowie, if you could please take roll.
Good evening, Miss Adams.
Here.
Mr. Bowyer.
Here.
Miss Craybill. Miss Justice.
Here.
Mr. McManus.
Here.
Miss Walker.
Here.
And Mr. Wildebohr.
Present.
I have not heard that Ms. Craybill will not be joining us this evening. I'm expecting that she will be joining us soon, but in the meantime, we do have a quorum and can continue. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Bowyer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Agenda is approved. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is closed session. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11, A1, A3, and A6, to consider personnel matters and to maintain the confidentiality of personnel records under North Carolina General Statutes 115C-319 and -321, and to consult with the board's attorney to preserve attorney-client privileged information. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
That was the same. Mr. Wildebohr, would you like that one? All right, thank you, Mr. Wildebohr. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bowyer. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? We are in closed session.
My whole family fell in love with that show.
All right. Welcome back. Thank you for your patience. Our next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. These are minutes from the board work session from March 5th, 2021. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Bollier. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. McManus. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Minutes are approved, 7-0. Okay. Next item on the agenda, consensus items, personnel report. Dr. Allison Coker, welcome to the microphone this evening.
Madam Chair, board members, I'd like to recommend 2 administrative hires that are on the personnel report and ask for your approval of the personnel report.
All right, you have heard the recommendation. Is there a motion?
Moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bollier. Second, Mr. Wildebohr. Thank you very much. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Administrative recommendations are approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to our next item, strategic plan proposals. As we've been discussing over the past few weeks, we are very excited to be embarking on a new strategic plan for New Hanover County Schools. And so we have heard presentations from 3 different groups: Greenway, INS Group, and NPH Consulting. And this evening, I would like to open the floor for discussion and figure out who we would like to recommend to be our partner in the strategic planning process.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Bollier.
I thought that Greenway's presentation was just absolutely out of the park. I love what they offer, but that price tag has me just a little bit concerned. I think with the pandemic coming to hopefully an end, I really want to put every dollar, every resource that we possibly can into our classroom, with our faculty, with our staff. And so I'm personally, and I'll just start the conversation off, more comfortable with the recommendation from NPH, with the more affordable price tag.
All right.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Sure. I think Mr. Bollier, he's kind of hit right on the nose. I thought all 3 proposals were very good. The first one and the third were especially good. But I agree 100%, with the financial piece. I think that the NPH would be just a great situation for us.
Ms. Adams?
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Walker.
I agree as well. I wrote down NC located, which is a big thing for me. They have an education background, board-oriented, which I thought was really good. And let's see, obviously the cost was a good thing. And the strategic planning task force component I thought was really good. I'd written on my notes.
Thank you. Anyone on this side of the dais? Ms. Craybill.
Yeah, from the loud end, I would like to start with, would like to also recommend NPH. I did my little, spreadsheet to show what, and one of my only concerns about NPH though is that they take a little longer, and if I calculated their dates out right, it would be like more of a mid-September implementation. But, school starts the end of August, so that to me doesn't seem like a big deal. But I really liked their process-oriented approach, where we are versus where we want to be, and they laid that out. The other thing that I noticed, there was a difference in Greenway and NPH were my 2 that I was like really evaluating more closely. That the MPH seemed to offer up less interviews, less focus groups, less surveys, but that also appeared to be where maybe some of the cost differential was. And so if we choose them and after we get into it, I would like for us to be open to asking them for a little more, gathering a little more feedback from our stakeholders if we feel like we need that. But that was my biggest thing for them. But again, for the $50,000 difference in price, them not having specific school experience versus Greenway that had substantial school experience, they had enough good experience that, you know, a strategic plan is a strategic plan, and if you're good at what you do, then it shouldn't matter what organization that you have helped before. So those were my thoughts.
Great, thank you. You do? No? All right.
Okay.
I actually agree with everybody.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion at this time then to adopt NPH as our strategic planning partner.
All right.
I'd like
there
to
is-
second.
That we have a first and a second. Any other discussion? One thing, I would like to just echo what everyone said. MPH and Greenway were my top two, and I think that they both presented, all three were fantastic presentations, and I thank all three organizations for coming forward to take the time to create something for this board. I do agree, I want to echo what Ms. Walker said. I do like the fact that they are North Carolina based, and I think it's important that they come from the Greensboro area and have worked in Guilford County, because I feel that Guilford County has a bit of a racial history like we have had. And I think that that's an important reflective piece, that they've done some work in that area as well, which for me was just an additional positive. I think that that's an important component of our discussions, especially around equity, and knowing the history I think is good. So, any other discussion?
Madam Chair,
Ma'am.
before we vote, I apologize to the group for being late and being tardy, so I'm sure that I didn't get counted as in the roll call. So am I able to vote?
Yes, it's reflected in the notes.
Okay,
It's
I just
reflected
wanna
in the
ma-
notes at the time that you arrived. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
You were marked tardy.
You were marked tardy, okay, only one.
All right, the motion on the table is to adopt NPH Consulting LLC as our strategic planning partner. Are any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. All right, welcome NPH. We are excited to work with you, and we look forward to that partnership as we move forward with our strategic planning. All right. Next item on the agenda, reopen schools legislation. So as we all know, last week there was a bipartisan press conference, and the governor opened up the opportunity for middle and high school students to attend in Plan A. And it was, I think, it was a bit of a shock for some of us, and with that, everybody started to move very quickly to decide what is best for our district. The administration has spoken and with principals of our middle and high schools. We have surveyed our families and have received data back to find out what their preference would be for staying in AAB model, going to Plan A, or staying remote. We thank the administration for collecting those results so quickly and for updating additional for today. The superintendent is recommending that the district move to Plan A for middle and high school effective April 12th. And so I would like to open that discussion to the board for discussion.
Well, I'm going to start off with the survey, which was the last thing I heard, but there's a lot of things I'd like to say. But I'll just start with that. The survey was sent out on Friday. It had, I think, a little over 6,000 respondents. Then it was collected Monday morning. And I don't think that that survey actually was a good representation. I know that we're trying to do things fast, so we can possibly get Plan A in place to do planning, which is the best way to always do something when it comes to education. But on the other hand, that was not, in my opinion, a good representative model of how the public actually feels. I just wanted to put that out there. Being one of the homes that got a response about it, and the person at my house didn't respond right away, so she was left out. She would have if she'd been given more time.
I just want to point out, Ms. Justice, this information was updated today at 4 o'clock, so it's actually up to 76, over almost 7,700 respondents at this
Okay.
point.
And that equates to
70%.
70% respondents.
70% respondents for middle and high school.
Okay, well, as I said, that was, I'm talking about yesterday is when I saw that information. And so what is the latest, since you did get this? I'm curious.
According to this,
That's
so
not
mi-
on.
You should have this on your,
Yeah,
Okay,
you have it, you should have a copy. 54, almost 54% of middle schools are represented, and 46% of high school in total. And of it, the feedback was that 58.6% would like to return to school 5 days a week. 21.7% would choose to remain on the fully remote option, and 19.6% would prefer to remain on the AABB model.
So when I counted the numbers that Dr. Faust gave us last week for total attendance, it's almost 14,000 students. And so we've got just over 7,000 respondents. So that's about half, right, of each one. Is that what you just said? I'm talking to Ms. Adams.
How many, I'm not sure, what's I thought our number for middle and high school total students, I thought it was around 11,000.
It is.
It's around
Okay, so
11,000.
I know that information we got in the packet last week, I added all the numbers up from the attendance from the schools you gave us, so that's what I was looking at.
Okay.
It was like over 13,000, so I don't know if that's the correct number or not, or I was just given the wrong numbers, or, I don't know. I mean, it would just be good to know, because then that really does kind of tell us what the response rate was.
So, I mean, we do have an updated version. It's still open, so possibly. What we found in doing surveys at the secondary level is sometimes our elementary folks will respond quicker than our secondary individuals. Not saying that that's anything, but sometimes we have, that is an indicator. But what we have, I think the one is at 522 is the latest one that we have. And Ms. Parks has that one. I'm sorry, Varnum. I didn't know her as Parks. I've only known her as Varnum. So we have the one that's latest. It's at 522.
Could I also request in the future, if you do these kinds of polls, could you send them to us also?
Yeah.
It's in the poll.
The poll to us, so we can see what it is that people are referring to? I know my daughter got it on the phone, but I didn't see a copy of it
It
ourselves.
only comes to individuals who are in our Power School. If you have a
I
student.
mean, for us, as board members, people ask us about it, it'd be good for us to have copies of the survey, so we know.
The survey questions?
Yeah.
Of what's
yeah,
being asked?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. If
I mean, in
that's
fact,
something that the board
over-communicate, I
wants.
keep saying that, over-communicate.
Well, and, I mean, to Ms. Justice's point, I think, unless we send out the exact same survey to everybody, principals, sometimes their wording, isn't as clear, and I know you want to let them have the autonomy that they need, but sometimes on these kind of things, it just makes more sense, but that's water under the dam, and I think that we do get a lot, but that might help in future surveys, I don't know.
So we did send this
did?
one out, yes.
The school
This
system
was-
did.
The school system sent this out, and they
Okay, okay.
selected their schools. So this one was ours, and so.
Yours complete, okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
I'd like to mention that I do appreciate that this, different than the last survey that we sent out for the elementaries, actually does give us more important data with AA, BB versus, the strict plan A or the full remote. So I do appreciate that, this is a lot more usable for us.
So, my understanding is the principals all agree to support this.
We had a conversation with the principals, and no one said anything opposing to it.
Was there an opportunity, excuse me one more time, was there an opportunity to talk to any of the teachers, or we just talked to the principals?
No, we did not.
Did not talk to the
That would have been a good idea. They're the ones that are in classrooms, and they probably could give us better information than a lot of other sources. There's been some discussion, I know, amongst the teachers that they would like to have more of a advisory capacity to possibly the board, and we'll talk about that more in the future, but, this is a collaborative enterprise. It's not a top-down enterprise when it comes to
Well,
teaching.
and I agree, there are opportunities for individuals to have those, and we do have those opportunities. As you and all of you know, the governor made this declaration on Wednesday. And on Wednesday, it was actually during our agenda review, the ad hoc. So during that, he was giving that, and then later, we had a commissioners meeting. Thursday, we had the principals meeting. Friday, we were all day together at the board. So we didn't actually have an opportunity. So our goal was to make sure that you had viable information in a timely fashion. And so we know that the board meeting was coming up. And so we wanted to make sure you had something in your hands, because the next time you meet would be actually after, back in April. So again, it would be great if we could do all of those things. Unfortunately, we're in a pandemic. And this is everything that we have. There's no roadmap to how you do it correctly.
Absolutely not.
So this isn't actually how we typically do things because we're in a pandemic, and we have to understand that we're in a pandemic. So leadership looks different during a crisis.
Oh, I agree.
So we have to understand that. So I want you to understand that this is a crisis, and I know you get that, but some of the things that we ask for, we can't always get it within the time limits that you need them in order to make a decision. I know it's a crucial decision, and we wouldn't put anything before you that we felt was not our best work. But due to the time constraints, this is the best work that we have.
Well, can I ask you this question then? We're having a meeting the 1st of April. Right, is it?
April
Our
13th.
next board meeting is April 16th.
Oh, that's right. We had, okay, that answers, that's right.
Right.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am, sir.
that's all right, that happens a lot. I think everybody knows, how strongly I feel about this issue, and, for me, I've always believed that I wanted to be a teacher-focused board member, and that remains true to this day, but they're 1A for me, and right now, the idea of getting our students back in the building for 5 or 6 weeks, just to be with their friends every day, to see their teachers every day, after this long and this hard a road, to me, that's the whole ballgame. And I know we've asked so much of our wonderful educators and our staff over the last 6 weeks, but we're at 4.1 positivity, 4.1%, I believe, positivity rate. Our educators have been offered a vaccine. Hopefully by the time they go back, they'll all have gotten their second dose. I feel like it is time to go back to school at long, long last.
Adams?
Yes, Ms. Walker, and then Mr. McManus.
Okay. I mean, I don't think anybody here disagrees with getting kids back.
No, we
to
want 'em
school.
back.
I don't
We
think
want the
anybody
kids in
here
school.
does. I think the thing about, there's so many more questions, and I really wish that we would have been included in the conversation a little bit sooner than today. Because I know at first the agenda was changed around for information, now it's for voting. It just would have been helpful for us to be able to be more informed about it. And I really hope in the future, and I take Dr. Faust's point, it is a pandemic. I don't think anybody else doesn't understand that. It's just we need to be communicating a little bit better about things like that. That's just how I feel about it. But, and I also wanted to say, looking at the timing, which April 12th would put us after the spring break, is that correct?
Yep.
Nobody's talked about where everybody goes on spring break when they come back and how we're going to deal with 3 feet as opposed to 6 feet, and what happens when you take a whole class down and during quarantine when they got tests and graduation. I think the only thing that bothers me is I just worry. I hope you guys have thought about it.
Well, and I wish the health, I know that there was a discussion earlier in the day.
Wait, Ms. Justice, can we let Mr. McManus have his comment, please?
I'm sorry.
No, Mr. McManus, you were
Go
next,
right
go
ahead,
ahead.
please.
And then we'll go
Madam
over to Ms.
Chair.
Justice.
Once again, we find ourselves making a decision that alienates those that on the opposite end of that decision. If my math's correct, we do a net gain of 12 days, if that's correct, because of the EOG and the EOC testing begins on the 14th of May. We start after spring break, which is the 12th. So if you add 3 days a week, we have 4 weeks, that's 12 days. That's basically what we have. The difficulty is the kids need to be in school. And I worry, as Nelson said, about our teachers, because God bless them. I don't know how they, if we're going to make a decision, then we need to make it so that they have more than enough time, because I know they're going to have to reschedule. They're going to have to redo lesson plans. I imagine some of these teachers are going to be teaching classes they haven't taught before, or doing both a virtual and a classroom, or remote in a classroom, excuse me. It's just a no-winner. Here we go again. I just have to say that. It's really, but we sent the elementary kids back. And so we set a precedent, intended or not. I kind of feel that way.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McManus. Ms. Justice?
Okay, well, the difference is the elementary school students are a lot different than high school, middle school. It's been proven that they are the ones, the high school and middle school students, they have the same susceptible to the virus as adults do. So that's worrisome for everyone. This is one of the reasons I wish we had the health department here, because there's some other indications, and I wasn't even looking for it today. But Duke University, for example, closed down there because they were spreading it around. They had a huge increase as high as over the fall. The
They had
last week.
fraternity parties.
I'm just saying that there's things, there's the, I'm just using Duke, but then, Europe, we know Europe is now closing down in some countries because of the variant. This is, I said, I just wish we had the health department here, just because safety first for me. I really do believe in having the kids come back. Believe me, I live with two. I know what you're talking about. The my elementary school student is very happy to be back, but, the high school student lives in my house would love to be back full time. But we need to look at all the factors, and I wish we had more information along that line, plus the teachers.
Ms. Farnham, would you like to share some information with us?
Yeah, let's go ahead and, from teachers' point of view.
Sure,
if you have some.
thank you, Madam Chair and board members. On behalf of administration, I wanted to provide the Plan A 6 through 12 reentry plan, or discussion points. And I would like to bring your attention to the main points of Senate Bill 220. That first outlines that local boards of education shall provide in-person instruction under Plan A, which we know is minimal social distancing, to all students enrolled in grades K through 5. We're compliant with that, so we move on to the next section. Grades 6 through 12. Grades 6 through 12, local boards of education shall provide in-person instruction either under Plan A, which was minimal social distancing, Plan B, which is the 6 feet social distancing, or both, to all students enrolled in grades 6 through 12. And then it goes on to say that we shall provide Plan A instruction to those students with individualized education plans, IEPs, and then also those with Section 504 plans. And the requirement is that we notify the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services and then partner with the ABC Science Collaborative. So those are addressed through, and it does go into discussion with robust contact tracing, which we do as a part of having our public health nurses as our school nurses. And then the authority to make day-to-day decisions being held with the local board of education for any shift of a school or a classroom. So next, it is the recommendation that our secondary schools open under Plan A, consistent with the legislation, on Monday, April 12th, with attendance options for our students of 5 days a week, or the AABB hybrid schedule, or full remote. We are articulating that we would follow all requirements of the Strong Schools Toolkit for operating under Plan A, including making a few adjustments that we have made with elementary going Plan A this week, using shorthand or one response screening with the temperature check, and seeing that in surveying our secondary schools about this process, how to expedite the screening process. This was opted as the quick, low-tech process over using an app, because it actually would be faster than trying to scramble and show a QR code for screening. I want to provide a quick update on our substitutes. The total number of substitutes are 439. And in that, the total number of active substitutes is 250, which is an increase of 76 since January of 2021. So kudos to our human resources team for that.
Thank you to HR, and thank you to our community for stepping
Thank you
up
very much.
to apply for those positions as well. Thank you very much.
So within, we do have a total number of inactive substitutes at 189. But again, that active substitute number is 250. The survey results are documented here that I'm going to share with you as of today at 5:22, so just before the start of the board meeting. And at that time, we had 7,707 responses. And I do want to clarify that we do have approximately 14,000 middle and high school students. 11 is our number for elementary.
Got it.
Sorry about that.
Got my numbers.
Sorry for that confusion. Our total number or percentage that want to remain on the AABB option, which would be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, is 19.7%. Our percentage of families that want to return to school 5 days a week is 58.4%. And then those that want to remain on the remote option is 21.8%. And again, the legislation lays out that all of these would be options for families as a parental choice. The next part of the survey asks about transportation, and of the 7,707 responses, 70% of the families reported that they would provide their own transportation. We received today the notification from North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services on what the plan would be, and it's, at this point, it's a notification and an attestation, and we're expecting we would receive a plan template after that. But for now, it asks that we attest that we follow social distancing and all of the major components of the Strong Schools Toolkit. Great. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Barnum?
I just want,
Oh, go ahead, Dean.
I'm sorry. Madam Chair, I just would like to make sure I understood you correctly. So the administrator's recommendation is to do Plan A and also to continue to do AA, B, or Plan B.
To accommodate those, the full A, and then also the hybrid and the full remote.
And how
So wait a minute,
again,
did I just hear that right?
That is
3
what-
different options?
That is what the state is.
So the the legislation in Senate Bill 220 says that we should operate under Plan A, Plan B, or both to all students enrolled. Our recommendation is to operate under Plan A with attendance options of 5 days a week, or remaining on the AABB schedule, or remaining on the remote schedule.
So we're gonna offer.
3 options?
All 3.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, okay, that's different, okay.
yeah.
So pretty much everybody gets what they want. Is that what I'm kind of hearing?
That's, yeah, well, it sounds like it.
Okay, okay.
What about the
Well, yeah.
I mean,
teachers doing all this work for 3 different groups?
Ms. Walker, yes.
Sounds like a lot.
I know we had, probably just under half respondents. I mean, at some point, you've got to get a real response, right, to know exactly what people are doing. I mean, if almost 70% are gonna bring themselves, I mean, that's gonna cause a lot of traffic nightmares. But also, what about the load on teachers? Like, if people decide they don't wanna come back, I mean, teachers are gonna have to do both. I don't know how they could do both. I don't know how that's gonna work. I mean, they're already working extra hard now. I mean, and we not allowed to say, let's give them Wednesdays at least? Or we have to do 5 days, or
So they're actually doing both now. They're doing both now.
You're talking about 3 now they're gonna be doing.
The only thing that would be different is the kids would be there could possibly be more kids in the classroom, but they're technically doing, when you have AA model or BB model, there are still kids at home who they're still teaching, so that doesn't change. The only thing that's changing is that there's an option for kids to be in the classroom.
What
More
about,
kids have been in the
what about
classroom.
keeping remote Wednesdays? I mean, the teachers are so, this is almost, I'm trying to process this. That, I was not aware that your recommendation involved also AABB.
So essentially, if what I'm hearing, in order to offer all 3, the expectation is that middle and high school teachers will be teaching synchronously online with in-person at the.
Same as, that's what they're doing
Right.
now. At the elementary level, they're doing the same. Remember, it's a recommendation, so if the recommendation, if you want to change the recommendation, you can change the recommendation. However, our recommendation is just that, because there would be no difference in, the remote would still be remote, because we still have to offer that option by the legislature.
So the recommendation is to provide our families in middle and high school the option of Plan A, 5 days a week, Plan AA or BB, the 2 days a week, and remote for the others, and then, or fully remote.
Right, so the thing is that we have students who have started working now,
Yep.
and they have jobs. And during the pandemic, they had to help provide for families when they lost. So our goal was not to disturb what that was. So it's not to give anyone else more work. It's like, how do we provide or continue with what we have been doing? And honestly, again, in the pandemic, I don't know how else to do to help our families. I'll just be that, how to help our families other than to provide access to being able to educate them.
Madam Chair,
Mr. McManus.
maybe it was just me. I wasn't aware that the AABB was also involved in this. But Dr. Fowles, I like it because what you said is a strong rationale for doing that.
Right.
So it really doesn't, so parents have a choice. It's the teachers. that
It's the
take
teachers.
hit.
This is hard.
Yes, Ms. Grable.
So,
We have the bus drivers.
could you, sort of talk us through with all of these 4 options? And there's actually would be 5 options, right? Because virtual academy would still be allowed, but that's kind of different. Okay. Could you talk through what that would look like in the classroom for a teacher that is accommodating essentially 4 separate groups of cohorts of students? I mean, at high school, it's going to look a little different than middle school, obviously, because of the way we have block scheduling. But could you just sort of talk through that so I can just get I'm not a teacher, and I'm not doing this every day, like they are. So.
Dr. Smith is on the line.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I was looking at your chair and it was empty, Dr. Smith, so I was.
Well, good evening to everyone, and I apologize for not being able to be there. I can give you an example. I was not too long ago in a classroom at New Hanover High School. The teacher had many of her students seated face-to-face in front of her, of course socially distanced and everyone was masked. But then she also had a device in her room, and at home she was providing instruction to those students who were remote. And this was, I believe, an English classroom. I'm not sure exactly the level. I believe it might have been 10th grade English. And the teacher was engaging both groups. There were times during the lesson when she would instruct her students at home for them to work on a particular activity, to reflect on a question, to think about their response. She'd walk the room and survey the children who were present. She'd come back to her device. She'd check her chat box for questions that she had, and then respond to those, and then let students again return to their independent practice. This teacher made it seem seamless, and I'm not going to say that is the case for everyone, but it definitely was working for her students, and they were very much engaged. In another classroom that I visited, specifically in that school, it was a different subject. It was mathematics. I think it might have been Math 3, and there the teacher was utilizing classroom instruction very similarly for students who were both present and students who were remote. The students who were present were on their devices. The teacher was delivering that instruction to them, and they were doing their practices on their device just as the students who were at home. The teacher then would give feedback to the students who were present, and then also provide feedback to the students who were at home. Many of our teachers have devices where they can display what information they're sharing to the students who are present in the room. And then for others, they just simply display that information on their screen. So this is already happening for many of our teachers. In other schools, they have been able to create schedules where not every teacher is doing the concurrent instruction with both students at home and at school. But our goal here would be not to disrupt that, but to support our schools in just making it available to more students who want to take advantage of it in the face-to-face setting. I've heard from many parents who feel that this is in their children's best interest.
So I have a question. With this option, I know that we put attendance rules into place this quarter. So if you were an AAB student, if you did not show up on your attendance day, you were marked absent. Would those same rules apply with all of this plethora of options? Or can a student say, yes, I'm an AABB student, but I want to go to school on Wednesday and come in?
Yes. So we would, basically, dependent upon the plan that the student is on, then their attendance would follow that plan. So if they are a 5-day-a-week student, then they would be expected to be there.
Madam Chair,
Thank you. Yes, Mr. McManus.
what's the potential that a teacher would have to teach 2 or 3 of those programs?
All the same.
5-day, AABB, and/or remote, or? In other words, would each teacher have one specific teaching arena? Or would they have 2 and/or 3 or more?
So I'll defer to Dr. Smith. I believe what she is saying that the schedule is set, and it depends on whether the students are face-to-face or not face-to-face, so it's not multiple different preps or multiple classes. But I'll defer to Dr. Smith.
Yes, and thank you, Ms. Barham. So you are correct. What I would offer to you is that many of our teachers are already doing this now. We don't see this as a significant change in their schedule. So you may have a teacher who is teaching multiple sections where she has students, where she or he has students at home, as well as attending in person. I think it becomes probably more problematic and more challenging when we have singleton types of courses, and maybe when we only have one teacher who offers that instruction within our building, and we may have had to make special accommodations. But what our human resources department has done already such a phenomenal job of really working through that. I've not heard any concerns from principals in regards to saying to me or to Mr. O'Brien, you know, Dr. Smith, Mr. O'Brien, we just can't make this work. We did share this with our principals on Thursday. We did have a work session with them where they had the opportunity to have conversations and problem solve. And again, I've not received any emails, any phone calls, any concerns expressed to me about this not being able to work in their building. And we're already working with families to try to problem solve around those students who are struggling academically to be able to come back for additional days of instruction. And what this would do is just make that available to all, because right now the current guidance does not allow us to do that. But we, again, could have teachers who are teaching multiple sections, but what I would offer to you is that they're probably already doing that now.
But they're doing 3 different platforms.
So when you say 3 different platforms, are you talking about Virtual Academy, full remote?
Well, you've got AABB, you're talking about adding a 3rd one with full-time.
So in essence, you have teachers who, it depends on how you think about it, and you have teachers who are teaching children on Monday, Tuesday, and teaching children on Thursday, Friday. So for the most part, they are teaching full-time, because what you teach on Monday, what you teach on Tuesday is not what you teach on Wednesday. It is continuous instruction. So there's no way to teach, you know, if I'm teaching part 1 on Monday, Tuesday, then I'm going to teach part 1 again on Tuesday, on Thursday, Friday. That's not what's happening. So it's the continuous instruction. And so if you've got a teacher who has children who are at home, then they are already teaching the face-to-face and the remote at the same time. What this does is, right now, if the majority of your children are home, and you have a few in the classroom, then it flips the script on that. So what we anticipate is now the majority of the children will be face-to-face, and you'll have fewer students at home. So it just really tips the balance. And then the other piece that's a significant change is just the Wednesday. So now what you do on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday, you would now do on Wednesday as well. I don't know of any teachers, and that's not to say that it's not happening in the district, but I know it's not the norm, where you have teachers who are doing face-to-face, all remote, and then the virtual academy in and of itself. Now that could exist, especially in a singleton course. If you've got only one teacher in your building who is teaching a particular course, and, you know, you have children who are coming face-to-face, you have children who are coming AABB, and then you have to support them in terms of virtual academy. If there are no other, there's no other way to do that, then you're already accommodating that. So in essence, we're not creating a new option, we're just extending the 2-day option to a 5-day option.
So what we have right now, if we were to take this and this were a classroom, this is actually an AABB model. Dr. Smith is on there. Ms. Varnum is at there. She's the teacher. We're the students. This could be an AAB model. This could be an all or a Plan A model. It all blends together. It's not like a separate setting.
And I understood that. In fact, I thought that while she was talking. But the realities are that in the classroom, you're going to have shifting. The environment's almost as important often as the substance of the education that you're, trying, the objective of the education itself. And you've got 3 different environments going on, and we're talking about children. They're big children. They're middle school. Middle school sounds totally different from high school. As far as you're not going to have kids staying out, I would say that probably a lot more kids would be doing A in middle school than high school. And then you also have a behavior component all across this. So just saying, I'm seeing a lot of, and I wish I could hear some teacher feedback about this, because I did not even realize this until a few minutes ago, that you were having the 3 options. And the unknowns are always what you get, they get you. And I see some unknowns in here that,
So if I can go back.
Go ahead.
I was sending all of the information to the board as soon as I would get it. When we increased to say Plan A, that was actually Plan B or whatever. We're already doing that. Again, like I said, this is an AA model or an AB model, what we're doing right now on the board, and it's also a Plan A model.
I hear you.
There's nothing that changes you don't see a difference in AA model versus, Plan A is that they're in there.
I think where the confusion was, I think that we thought the recommendation was either Plan A or remote. But what it is, I'll be honest with you, I think this is fantastic that you're giving that third option of giving families the choice. For me, from the beginning, this conversation has been about the safety. And if teachers were returning back into the classroom and schools were open, they didn't have a choice. They had to be in the room, right? We were giving our families a choice to be remote or be in the classroom, but the teachers and staff didn't have that. The fact of the matter is the vaccines have been a game changer. By the time April 12th comes around, teachers that have been vaccinated should be fully effective with their vaccines. What we are doing now, and when school shut down on March 13th, the plan was always to get our kids back to school. That's what we know is best for them. We know that's how they learn. We know that's what they socially need. This is an opportunity. I understand the data's out there. We know that 13 and up transmit as adults, COVID. It is a fact. But we have to give our families the option and the choice. If they feel that that is dangerous and they do not want to send their children back, they don't have to. If they feel that they are willing to take that chance, I think it's time that we give them that. I would like to make a motion to approve the recommendation.
Well, can we?
Madam Chair, I'll ask a question.
Well, hold on, I'm putting a motion on the table.
If you make the motion, we can still keep talking.
When we get to discussion,
Okay.
let's see if we get, okay, so I would like to make a motion to approve the recommendation for Plan A, Plan AA, BB, and remote, starting April 12th. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bollier. Discussion, Ms. Crable.
Okay, so a question for Dr. Smith. So help me understand a little bit about the remote learners, and they get helped in a different way than kids who are in class, because the teacher can circulate the classroom and can look in real time at papers and dialogue. It's not quite as easy to do that in remote. So is this something that is doable? All the options, and still, because it looks to me like about half of our kids are in remote, at least in high school. And so I guess that's all I anticipate coming back, but that's just Stephanie Craigville personal opinion. So is this adequate instruction for our remote learners? I mean, are they, I mean, is it going to take too much of the teacher's time, you know, to divide between the different categories of instruction delivery? Is the question clear, or am I just babbling?
No, the question is clear. And so, you know, thinking about the survey data, in essence, you have about 60, well, of the folks who have responded, which I think it's very important to understand. And so we've got about a 50% response rate. And then if we look at how that response rate has fallen out, you know, most of those numbers are younger students, our ninth graders, our middle schoolers. The numbers decrease as we move toward our seniors. But if you look at that, you've got about 80% of those who responded who said that in some form or fashion, I want to be present in your schools. Right now, what we're seeing is about 50% of those folks who have been given that opportunity, but many of them are choosing to stay remote just simply because of the way the classroom is set up, because teachers are toggling between the two. So what this does, it just really shifts the balance, and it really shifts the balance toward in-person instruction. But that still, because we've been, you know, sharpening our craft in terms of remote instruction, that still should not negatively impact what teachers are able to do and how teachers are able to support students remotely. So they are still able to design the instruction, deliver the instruction, provide the practice opportunities and the feedback. But for so many of our learners, because if you think about it, you know, many of our children, if they're in high school, so they've gone the first 9, 10, 11 years of their schooling with in-person instruction. So that is what they're most used to, that's what they're most comfortable with, and that is what's most effective for them. But again, our teachers have worked really hard, really sharpened their craft, and are becoming even more exceptional at delivering online instruction. So I don't see where this would negatively impact those students who are going to be still remaining remote, because this is what our teachers have been doing since we've begun Plan B.
Thank you, Mr. McManus.
I apologize, I'm still trying to understand. The same teacher could be teaching 5 days and also have AABB. That a possibility? Same teacher, same class. Okay, so what do they do with the kids that miss Wednesday?
And yeah, that's what, yeah.
So I'm not sure, was that question to me?
What is different about remote
Anybody?
Wednesdays?
They don't.
And can I say, well,
Well, let me, Mr. Wildebohr and then Ms. Justice.
So the question, what is different about remote
I
Wednesday?
need to keep the signs down, please. Thank you. Mr. Wildebohr?
I'm sorry.
Actually, I have two questions, and either can answer it. Will there be any movement allowed? Say, you know, what I saw, I went to an elementary school the other day, and I saw a whole bunch of students coming back because they saw pictures. So if the students that are in AA after the first week say, you know what, I really want to be here 5 days a week, is that allowed? Will that be allowed? Either, anybody? 'Cause,
So
I mean,
I can speak to the initial conversations that we've had. You know, if we have families that begin with AABB, and they want to make the decision to increase to 5 days, I know, to the best of our principals' ability, they've been working to accommodate those families at this point, especially, you know, in those situations where students are struggling academically. So I can't imagine a situation, especially where we are at this point of the year, where that would not be accommodated.
okay, and my follow-up question, as one of my colleagues likes to say, so if the children, the people that understood AABB on the survey understood it with half the students, but we're not talking about half the students now, it could be almost a whole classroom, so with the AABB thing, correct? Because, you know, right now, when you go to AABB,
Correct.
you have half the students, but now you're gonna have a lot more than half the students.
There won't be two separate groups, I think is what you're asking.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'd be the same kids.
Ms. Justice?
Yes, one of the reasons the teachers are so successful right now, and they've been working so hard, I don't even think any of them had weekends, they've been lucky if they even have a day or two on a holiday, is because they've had that remote Wednesday, and they've been able to work with the students that are on remote, and also the ones with ABB. Has there been any consideration given to leaving that in, at least for the sake of not burning our teachers out totally? Because we could have teachers on a Friday at a high school that might have like over 30, 35 kids in a very crowded classroom. And, you know, maybe on a Monday with the AAB, you know, with half that amount, just like, you know, Mr. Wildebohr has said. I mean, there's a lot of moving factors here. Teachers need to plan, see what's going on. And that's been an invaluable day. Has there been any consideration given to that? Leaving the Wednesdays as remote?
Ms. Adams?
Yes,
I know,
Ms. Walker.
I guess
I was
that's a
asking
basic
Dr.
question, but
Faustus.
I would just follow what Ms. Justice said. I know maybe Dr. Smith hasn't seen any or heard any kind of complaints, and you probably wouldn't, but I know we have.
Uh-huh.
We have had teachers say to us, please just leave the Wednesday remote, because, I mean, there are so many unknowns with this, and adding on that third element with, you know, the AABB model as well, I just feel like they still need that time for, at least the things they've said to us, for planning and for making sure that all their things are graded and all the other things that are happening in this crazy time that we are experiencing.
Right,
And so we do understand that. However, the option for our elementary schools was 5 days, and they teach remote and AA. And so I don't know how that was, we didn't know how to explain that one. However, we did ask that one to remain on AABB option. That was one of the options to return to school 5 days. I think that was your question. It's on the third page of your survey for your questions.
So we have a motion and a second on the table. Ms. Craybill?
Yeah, so, again, coming back to the remote, is there any difference in this for middle schools and high schools because of the block schedule versus the five classes a day for that? As far as like if like, let's say one teacher has 25 kids back in her classroom and another teacher has 5 kids back in her classroom, but the others are remote. That's just kind of the way it shakes out, or is that?
That would be, because we wouldn't go in and redo schedules.
Okay, so we're not going to redo schedules
No,
at all, okay.
No.
Ms. Justice? I'll come back to Mr. McManus. Ms. Justice?
okay. Yes, well, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to insert the words, I move to add the remote Wednesdays will be maintained for the remainder of the 2021 school year. I would like to add that to the motion.
All right, there's an amendment on the table to amend the motion to include remote Wednesdays. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so we are going to vote on, the vote would be to add that amendment to the motion, okay? So any discussion? Mr. McManus?
I have 2 things. One, we did not give a Wednesday to the elementary teachers.
That's true.
So that's kind of in your face if we do that. I'm sorry, but try to play fair. 2, and I apologize, Julie or Dr. Smith, a 5-day Plan A teacher, can they also be responsible for the AABB days? Classes, instruction.
Yeah.
They can't.
Yes, if I understand
So
your correct.
what is the plan for the kids who are not there on Wednesday?
Technically, there's still work for them.
Okay, but they're not in class.
Right.
That's really it.
So Wednesday is still an
It's still an
instructional day.
It's still an instructional day. By law, we have to have it as an instructional day. So it's not supposed to be a planning, like, free fall. There's supposed to be instruction going on because we have to count those hours.
My question is because the kids are missing 20% of the classroom.
Right.
Classroom instruction.
Any other discussion or question about the amendment? The
Well-
remote Wednesdays.
At the time, we didn't have that option when we were talking about the AABB. And not only that, just because it does, and I feel for the elementary teachers, because at this point, I would think that would be a good thing for them too, because of all the work that is on their plate that normally is not during the regular school year. Hate to see the perfect, interfere with the good, and this would still be very good for our middle and high school teachers if we plan to go to this all the way in with this. I mean, all three plans at once, to at least give them that option so that they are shown that they are supported and given time. Literally, I'm hearing all the overload. We're going to be having trouble finding people going into the education profession after this year, nationwide.
All right, thank you, Ms. Justice. Let's go ahead and let's take a vote then, please. All those in favor of the amendment of adding remote Wednesdays to the motion to go back into to all the plans, we'll just say that for this, say to accept the amendment of remote Wednesdays, say aye.
Madam Chair, wouldn't we want to do a roll on that, or are we just going to?
You know what, that's a good idea, Mr. Wildebohr. Ms. Bowie, can you call the roll on this one?
Miss Adams?
No?
Mr. Boyer?
No?
Miss Justice?
Yes?
Miss Craybill?
I don't think we need it with all the options, so no.
Mr. McManus?
No.
Miss Walker?
Yes.
And Mr. Wildebohr?
Yes.
All right, motion passes amendment is denied 4-3. So the motion on the table is returning students to all plans effective April 12th through 6th grade through 12th grade. Is there any additional discussion before we move to vote? Yes, Ms. Graham.
All right, so we didn't hear anything in the discussion from Ms. Varnum about our cafeteria times, our changing the hallway times, and it doesn't look, I'm not even going to ask about transportation because it looks like most of our kids aren't transporting by the bus. Maybe looking at the drop-off line going halfway down the road at a lot of our high schools. I mean, we haven't heard any of that, so do you have a few words on that?
So what I shared about the screening process was to expedite that through the sort of as I described in the quick low-tech process of the 4 keywords in each of the screening questions, rather than reading all the screening questions, using those 4 keywords for one simple answer while the temp check is still being done. Those are still required under the Strong Schools Toolkit, so those can't be alleviated or removed.
But
And
I
so
was
that
talking more
would
about the
expedite.
cars like we had the situation at Ogden where it took an hour and a half to even get a person from the street to the school.
So in our review this week with our elementary schools, those have all been resolved based on what we understand. And so it happens through kind of expediting the screening and not having that be a 2-minute experience, but a 3-second experience. And mainly with what we have provided as an example to principals would be using those, having those posted pre-teaching, preparing our parents that those are the 4 keywords we're going to ask: diagnosis, exposure, quarantine, that kind of thing, and then do the temp check and they come in. And that really does speed it up. In visiting schools, I think we all found that they were able to, even on day 1, they might have been 15 or 20 minutes behind, but by day 2 and 3, they weren't.
Madam Chair?
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Wildebohr, the final question.
If I could ask actually Mr. Anderson a question. Do we have any knowledge on how many buses, how full the buses will be? Because we've been talking about the K-5 students and having 2 to a seat, which is scary enough. How about with our high schoolers and middle schoolers?
We have fewer students riding the bus at the secondary level, and they're seated 2 to a seat to begin with, not 3 to a seat. So we'll maintain that. I think we've got, we're essentially combining the routes. We'll make some changes, but it's probably more work than the output really shows. But a simple way of looking at it is combining the AA-BB routes, and we'll have the same number of buses running very similar routes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Bowie, can we do a roll call for this vote, please?
Miss Adams?
Aye.
Mr. Boyer?
Aye.
Miss Justice?
No?
Mr. McManus? Ms. Craybill?
What, yes.
The motion,
Okay.
to move
I
to
got thrown
Plan
off.
A, Plan AABB, and remote.
Thought you weren't here.
Yeah, she
April
thought
12th.
she thought I wasn't here.
What'd you say?
She thought I wasn't here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes?
Yes, yes.
Mr. McManus?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
No.
And Mr. Wildebohr?
Aye.
All right, motion passes 5-2. Thank you very much. All right, next item on the agenda, we are going to enter into our information items and budget planning. I believe we are going to welcome Mary Hazel Small to the microphone.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Sorry. Tonight, I'm going to present some information about our budget development, some updates on several different topics. We're going to talk about projected revenue changes, local salary initiatives, capital outlay, and federal relief funding. Dr. Faust, at the next meeting, will bring back his recommended budget. So this is just sort of to get you ready for all that information to come.
Okay.
So we'll start with
It's working.
Hold on.
You advanced.
It's on. Okay, thank you. So we'll start with projected revenue. Go ahead. It won't go with me. Maybe there's just a delay. Okay, we got it. So this slide shows projected revenue. We looked at a slide in your work session where we looked at like 5 years of data. So this is just oh no, bring it back, okay. This is just current year and next year. So current year, we projected, or the state projected for us, just over 26,000 students, and our local projections match that. But of course, after the pandemic, that dropped dramatically to 24,721, as of that first month of school. And so the state has given us their projections that are based on 5 years, and they do expect for us not only to recover, but also to grow in the way that our numbers were trending with the exception of the hurricane and the pandemic. And so we're going to project using those numbers, and I'll talk about charters for just a second. Charter school growth has been provided to us, but that first year of charter school growth, they're in our numbers. So we have to back, because the state won't take those back and move the money to them until after school starts. So our actual projections for next year that we're planning on is 26,300. So that sort of allows us to give the charter schools their growth projected in than ours. And of course, after the first month of school, we'll shore up if there's any differences. So that is our planning number. It's a little higher than what I thought I would be bringing back, but we also are going to talk tonight about the federal funding that's coming. And part of it's already here. And so if we're wrong on these projections, we thought it would be better to err on having the resources in the school and the staff in the schools ready for the students. If we wait, we won't be able to hire the teachers, if we waited until August. And so we'd rather be prepared as the students return. If for some reason our estimates are wrong, we'll have stabilization funding, so that maybe over 2 years, we bring the students back. So does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Questions about that before we move on? Okay, next is the estimated county revenue used in that estimate. So the first column, the first two lines show the operating revenue distribution between us and charters. That the second column is the current year. And then the projected growth based on, once we had settled up with our mid-year increase, our per pupil this year was $3,011 per student. So the county has asked us to budget our base budget request based on that. That's our estimate. And so that would give us just over $2 million more dollars, and then give the charters about $800,000 more. And so that's kind of where we're starting. Also, you can see for capital outlay, they have indicated to us that we can expect to receive our more typical capital outlay appropriation of $3,696,000, which we'd had for several years, but last spring they reduced their capital and ours by half, which is why we had less last year. So that we already know that number. So I'll plug that in. The pre-K grant, I've shown here, just early projections, what it is now. But we have also been discussing with the county 2 initiatives. One is pre-K expansion. They had wanted to do that a couple of years ago. We wanted to see how everything fell out with redistricting and space. And so we expect to request 3 additional classrooms there, depending on what the board wants to do. And also teacher supplements that y'all discussed this at your work session with them last week. But they have been asking for information, which I'll share in just a moment, on what it would cost to get our teacher supplements to the top 10 in the state. So those are things that we're planning on. The next discussion, which would include teacher supplements, but are the salary initiatives we're looking at for all of our employees, not just teachers. But starting with teachers, this is the information that is showing, I got ahead of my notes. Okay. So you can see, right now we're ranked 27th in the state, and our average is $4,183 for our average teacher supplement, and that cost about $10.5 million a year. Most of that is local, but federal supplements are paid in federal. And so we are basing any increase, that the entire increase would be local funding. So that's why it's not exactly half. So you can see there what it would cost to get to 1st, 4th, 6th, 8th, and 10th, just as an example. And so at 10th, it would cost an additional $1.4 million, and then $10.5 million more to get to 1st. And that's after we redirect the bonus money that the county gave us this year, and they asked us to use it for bonuses this year and teacher supplements next. So we already have that, but we already know that that goes towards this next year. And so that's part of that $3,011 per pupil. So anyway, that is just sort of where we are in the supplement discussion. We certainly need to take direction from you and from them on where that request needs to be between 1st and 10th. I like 1st, but it's completely up to y'all on how you want to do that. So, more discussion on that later. The other salary initiatives, and these are not new ideas, we've been talking about these for several years. First, for non-certified salary, you may remember that the state, for state employees 2 years ago, might have been 3 at this point, increased the minimum wage to $15 per hour. The county followed suit, as did the community college. And so we were way behind that, and the state did not do it for school employees that they fund. And so they are talking about now, there is some legislation where they have surveyed every school system to find out how much it would cost to get to 13, 14, 15, to calculate that. But as you can imagine, they're pretty large numbers. And so we had already done our first phase of this, which got the average for most non-certified to 13, and for the child nutrition helpers we got to 12, and then for the bus drivers we got to 14. I said that out of order. So the proposals this year would be to take the bus drivers to 15, the non-certified to 14, and the child nutrition to 13. So that's kind of the second phase of our plan. What we hope is the state will come along and pay for a good portion of this with their initiative, because most of these employees are state employees. But we'll just have to, we should know more between now and when we bring this back to you in a month. Okay. So I won't go through everything, but that's the big point of the non-certified, and of course, just making sure that the second big piece of that is, because we never had a state budget and state salary decision in the last 2 years, there was no step increase this year. The board approved last year to do it with local funds, but not this year. So we would be requesting that we allow them we adjust the scale, but also catch up their steps. For central office administration, we want to revise the schedule with 1% steps, and then we really need to get the central office schedule more in line with the principal schedule. A principal and director's salary used to be in alignment, but with all the changes the state made over the last several years with principal pay, it's quite a bit out of alignment. And we're just trying to get in alignment with principal base pay, not met and exceeded and all that, just the base and the supplement. So you can see those recommendations there to provide more equity. and just move us up towards, right now, we are at the sort of the bottom 2/3 of the state ranges for our central office employees, and to move us up to the top 2/3 of that. Child nutrition, I've already mentioned, and also increase the sub rate for child nutrition, and then for bus drivers, do the same thing, increasing to 15 and increasing the sub rate. So any questions on that?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Ms. Craven.
The, do we have any control at this level about the substitute rate?
The substitute rate is for teachers versus these?
Yes, substitute teachers versus substitute child nutrition.
The substitute rate for teachers is set by the state, but because we pay ourselves locally, you could go higher. It's a percentage, and I can't remember the exact percentage right now, it's a percentage of base teacher pay. And then there's a lower supplement rate if you're not certified.
Right.
And so there's kind of a range the state gives you, and so we're higher in that bottom range, but we're equal at, we use the state rate for
Certified
subs. But you
subs.
could choose to do it higher, but it had to be with local money.
Okay, so subs are paid a percentage of the base pay, not the teacher pay with the supplement.
It's a percentage of, yes, of the state base pay.
Okay.
Ms. Justice.
Yes, two questions. When you go back to, let's see here, the supplement amounts themselves.
Yes.
And you noted we were 27th in the state.
Yes.
As far as teachers' pay goes. Now, it was my understanding, and I guess it's been a couple years and some numbers have shifted, but that we are actually, as a county, we're literally the sixth richest in the state as far as resources go.
We're what?
The sixth richest as far as resources go.
It depends. I think it was 7th last time I looked, but we're
Yeah.
in that range.
So there's a big difference between us being 27th supplement-wise and us being a rich county. I don't know how else to put it. So is there some way between now and the next meeting where you could go back and find out for sure, and also find out, say we got the 7th highest supplement to match, if it is, we're the 7th richest county. I'm just putting it that way, okay?
And certainly, and
If you could find what the 7th is.
I showed that on there. I think I did 8th, I think, because I was just trying to do even numbers.
Okay.
So I think 8th would be $6,000
Okay.
average supplement, and then 6th would be 7th.
Yeah, if you could just sort of, and that's good right there, but that's a good aim at right there.
And it's
Also-
tricky because other people's supplements keep changing too, so it's rather hard to get exactly right on it.
Well, yeah, at times change, that's for sure. This year's really different. And also, as far as the $15 an hour, 2 years ago, when we brought this up during a budget meeting, and you remember this, I'm sure, maybe you don't, I did at the time, and that was when the state had raised the salary to $15 an hour. I asked if we could do that, and at the time, Dr. Markley was the superintendent. He said that he would look into it, and you said that it could be done, but unfortunately, that board then did not vote in favor of looking into it. So is it possible now for you to look into what it would take to raise across the board to just look into it, what it would take as far as the cost to our district to go to $15 an hour next year? I'm just asking. Is it possible?
I already had to provide that to the state, so I have that. I didn't bring it tonight.
Oh,
but I
great.
have
So
that
could you do
information.
that the next,
Certainly get
thank
that.
you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Vice Chair.
just to quote President Biden, he says, "Tell me, show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value." I could not be more excited to see a push from our board and a push from our county partners on the commission to reward the work that we have seen this past year. I mean, these teachers, as we said, we've asked so much from them, and I think it's a wonderful thing if we collectively ask more for them, because they deserve every penny of it. So I'd like to push the envelope as high as we can as we move forward and see if we can't get to number one, because I think our teachers are number one in the state.
Okay.
So, here we go. Switching to capital outlay, so completely switching gears. In your notebooks, I didn't even talk about the notebooks. We have notebooks for you that have a copy of this PowerPoint, of course. It also, I think she put in a copy of last month's PowerPoint, but I'm not positive. And then I'm just going to go over the summary numbers for capital outlay, but you have within your notebook the detail with every project listed that we're recommending for funding, and then the facility detail in the back shows every project that's in their $46 million worth of total needs there. So And I will also mention that the project that we talked about last week is no longer in here because I'll bring a budget amendment for you at your next meeting and you will approve it. So these are projects for next year. So the way you look at this summary is we have categories of funding. So we have repairs and renovations, technology, vehicles and equipment down the left side. And then we have what we're recommending in terms of funding for the next 2 years, because the county always likes us to do capital outlay 2 years out. And then there's things that were on the list that we couldn't fit in either of those columns, so they kind of just fall under future consideration. None of these items are included in that on those long-range plan, larger projects that you discussed last week. So these are the smaller projects, still equally important, but more on the repair side than the renovation side. Yes.
And did you, Madam Chair?
Oh, yes, Ms. Graham.
Do these ones have like the $50,000 limit or the $25,000? Are these the ones that fall into that category? You know how you had some that you don't have to come to us if it's under a certain amount?
We do have, I think I can answer that. We do have if it's a small project, we have in the operating budget for maintenance, we have a small project fund that they get $200,000 a year, if that's what you're asking, where they can they can prioritize the smaller ones. Certainly you budget the fact that they get $200,000 a year to do that, but you don't approve each one of those. Okay. But those items are not on this list.
Okay.
So is that
okay.
What you would agree with?
Because you brought that to us a couple meetings ago, the list of small things that, with all the safety improvements and things like that, and but you said they were like under 25,000, I think, or 50.
What I brought, it was under 50, but that's only design contracts where
okay. Sorry.
we're asking for. We approved an exemption during the course of the year. That's not related to the construction piece.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
You'll also notice that some projects are prioritized 1, 2, or 3, and clearly if it's not priority 1, you're not really going to see it in our recommendation just because we don't have enough funding to quite get there yet. So the next slide is a summary of those projects by category, where rather than the list of all the projects which you have, which is about 5 pages, this kind of puts them in groups. So under repair and renovations that total $5 million, and something really happened with my typing on that HVAC upgrade. That's $1,608,000. I don't know what really happened there. Sorry. But you can see, clearly the largest item, well, not the largest item, but the top number 1 priority is the phase 2 of the safety upgrades. Where we're upgrading our buildings in terms of entrances and all those things to make them more safe. HVAC upgrades, the $1.6 million, minor renovations at various schools, just over $1 million. Roof replacements, and that doesn't mean the entire roof, but just the sectors that need to be replaced at 3 sites. And then, of course, the other school that you already approved that's not on this list anymore. And then, although I may have left the words there. As I'm reading to you, I'm editing, sorry. And then site upgrades at Coddington and Hoggard, $690,000. For technology, what you don't see on here is the one-to-one initiative, because that would be funded with a different funding level, amount or source, and we'll talk about that in a minute. These are our annual replacements for technology, as well as some other items they need in terms of projection devices, network equipment, and scoreboards. And then smaller amounts for replacing 3 maintenance vehicles, custodial equipment, and furniture. And kind of moving furniture, last year we made the decision that we would try to create a furniture reserve from the surplus sales that we have when we sell our furniture. And so we've been letting that build up. So we're going to start the furniture reserve with a fund balance appropriation from that. And then finally, by revenue source, which is also on the front page of your first capital handout. And so we're looking at a balance in the state lottery, both from savings and new appropriations of just over $2.3 million. The other capital sources, which include CARES Act for the annual replacements, some interlocal sales tax revenue, and fund balance appropriation. So I think the bond savings, we already, that's part of what you'll approve next month. And then the county capital, which is estimated at $3,696,000 for a total of $9,560,350. So that is our capital in like a really fast version, but there's a whole lot of detail in your notebook, and I ask that you look through each of the projects. If you have questions, Mr. Anderson will be happy to answer, as well as Ms. Brinson and anyone else, but you could, of course, call me as well. But if you have any questions already, if you had a chance to look before the meeting, I'm happy to try. Yes, ma'am?
Yeah, I'm just curious, Holly Shelter, how old is Holly Shelter?
Say again?
How, I'm sorry, I've got to get used to this. How old is Holly Shelter, the building itself? Isn't it our newest middle school?
Yeah, I can't remember, yeah.
Okay, because I saw that you had roof replacements on there. Is that normal within 10 years to have, or 12 years? Maybe hurricane related?
The roof replacement on there, it's not really a roof replacement. We're having some, through wall flashing and roofing detail issues. We've worked and tried to fix it, and our fixes just haven't worked, and we're now working with an engineer that specializes in that area. We've come up with a solution to. It's just been, an ongoing problem.
Okay.
But it's a very small area. You're
Well, that's
right.
good to hear.
Yeah, that's a metal roof, so, we're looking at, 30 years.
Mr. Wildebohr.
Okay.
Mr. Wildebohr.
Mr. Anderson, while you're up, just a quick question. I didn't notice anything, since we're talking about Holly Shelter, I know that their fields have a lot of issues, and I didn't see anything in here addressing that. Are we not, what are we doing with that?
Yeah, we're having, Holly Shelter, their football field has some drainage issues.
Mm-hmm.
We've gone out and cleaned out all the drains. With our spring work to the field, we're going to be adding, I think it's 50 tons of sand, and working that into the field, hopefully to get some better drainage. We're also working with an engineer to develop a scope for some long-term improvements to really, what we're doing is going to hopefully help that water sink into the ground a little quicker. The long-term is to improve our drainage and get that water away from the field. But we really, right now, we're just working to crown that field a little better. And in the baseball outfield, we're going to be adding some clay gravel mix to the warning track. Right now, there's just too much of a lip at the end of that track. It's a safety concern.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, so now switching to another fun topic, federal COVID-19 relief. I'm going to start with this slide to just sort of explain, because we hear a lot about CARES Act, but there's actually 3 different acts. 2 of them approved more recently. And so on the left, you have, and I guess you probably don't need me to read them all, but I will say that CARES is really Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. Then we had the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. And then last week, we had the American Rescue Plan. So those are the big categories of funding. To the right, you see how that money is allotted to schools. And so for each of them, they had what we call ESSER, 1, 2, and 3. And that is the elementary and secondary emergency relief funding. And that is funding that is allotted directly to us. So it's calculated how much we get based on our Title I percentages. It's not used just for Title I schools. It's just how we find out how much our county gets based on Title I percentages. And it's a little bit more broad in how we can use it. And so that's the major funding source. There's also some of that is held back, that is allowed to be held back by the state and then allotted to school system on a more competitive basis for specific needs. And so we also have gotten some grants through that. The GEAR is the portion that's allotted through the governor's office, and then the governor determines how the grants are appropriated. And so we've gotten 2 GEAR grants so far. Both were related to, one was related to health services, so allowed us to have more social workers and counselors. And then there was supplemental instruction was the other one for students at risk. And so there's sort of a gear 1 and 2. We've gotten the 1, we don't have the 2 yet. And then finally, the federal state aid. It's the portion of these 3 grants that's determined, the use is determined by the legislature. And so that comes to us in many different grants and programs that are either allotted or we apply for. To date, we have received, just through those first 2, we have received 19 separate allocations of programs. And we expect, many more to come. So just a little bit about the dollar amounts. So we've received the gear. We've received ESSER 1. And I didn't even list on here those programs from the Coronavirus Relief Fund that the state did that we've already spent. So this is estimates for next year, how much we think we'll have left. ESSER 2, we will be able to apply for that. We know the amount. They could change it, but right now the amount DPS published is $24,361,000, and that will be available for 2 years through fiscal year ending the year ends June 30th, but it'll be available through September of 23, and we will be able to apply for that April 1st. So they'll be releasing that. We'll get in our application as quickly as possible, and then those funds will be available right now. Then ESSER 3, I'm estimating that because it will be allotted in the same way, so I just did the calculation based on the first number, based on how much the total is, and I'm estimating $55 million. You cannot hold me to that. It could be any number they want it to be, but that is what I think. And so I don't know the exact amounts that we'll determine to budget every year. I just have this slide to kind of show the idea of which years the money will be available. So assuming, like with that gear grant, I know how much I'm going to spend this year, so I think I know how much is available for next year to pay for those positions. And the same thing with ESSER 1, and we'll spend the rest of that next year, and then 2 and 3. So we'll have additional resources through September of 24.
Ms. Mel, if I could just ask this, and this may be a really dumb question. Are these true grant funds that we are not going to have to pay back anything, get taxed on it? I mean, what is any of this going to have to go back?
Yeah, think of this how we get all of our federal grants. So it's just federal funding.
Okay, great.
And it is not a loan. Yes, ma'am.
Well, from what I'm hearing, if we don't spend it in the year we're allotted it, we have to return it? I'm not listening, I heard that today on the news.
There are ending dates for all the grants, including some that end this year. Now, we will have some of the CRF funding. They kept changing it. First, it was going to expire based on something our legislature had done last December, and then they extended that through this coming December. But most of that for us will be spent this year, so I didn't even list it up there.
And it's also in the PowerPoint slide, so you have your years.
Yeah.
The estimated available for future years. So it gives you the total years 22. The only one is the gear 1 that is through 22. Then you move down to the next one. ESSER 1 is through 22. ESSER 2 is through year 23. And ESSER 3, the estimate is year through 24.
Okay.
So you could choose to spend it all next year if you wanted to, every bit of it, or you can spread it over the time. But it won't revert, as you're saying, until the end. Now, if you didn't apply for it, I mean, even though we know it's sort of it's a application just in that the state has to approve that the way you want to spend it meets the guidelines for the grant. You're not applying for a dollar amount. You're just applying for the money you were allotted, the same we do with Title I. But if we don't have a plan that meets the requirements, they're not going to allot the money to us. So I guess it's possible that if someone didn't have a plan for all their money, it could get redistributed, but that doesn't normally happen. Yeah.
So in your gear money, and that's what the governor controls, so is there, and we have to apply to get that too, right? Like,
Yes, so it's application, but there's certain amounts you're allowed to apply for.
Okay.
So it's the same kind of thing, but we did have to, Student Support Services had to put a plan in place, and it had to be approved.
And does each LEA get like, sort of like X percentage of the pot? Like suppose we applied for like 5 things and somebody else only applied for one, could we possibly get the 5 things?
I don't know you submit a budget for the amount they've allotted to you, and I guess if your budget wasn't approved and y'all couldn't work something, you didn't resubmit, it could be redistributed, but I don't know that happening yet. That certainly happens with other grants. But I think everyone has great need, and I don't know of any of this reverting at this point in the process.
Okay, and so this money couldn't be handled like the lottery was when a couple years, they took the money and said, we're gonna just hold it for ourselves and we're not gonna give it to you?
That's a whole nother story, but
Okay, if that's not
this
applicable, then we
money,
can skip.
the way that it's appropriated is determined at the federal level. But if we go back to this slide, there is a portion of it, which is considered federal state aid, that the legislature can decide what to do with it. So they could change their mind. They could put in, like our state put in that you need to spend it by December, because if you don't, we're going to reallocate it. So that did happen with that, because they wanted to make sure that it was going to get used because there was such a need. So if people, because especially with that was more emergency, and some counties had greater needs than others, so they wanted to know as quickly as possible what the need was and then reallocate it if necessary. But most folks use the money. So.
But sounds like we are Johnny on the spot and we apply as soon as we're able. Okay, which is good.
So, and I know this is a lot, but one more slide, hang in there with me. This is way too much information on one slide, but this was just to tell you the kinds of things we're thinking of for that 24 million. We hadn't even gotten to the other one because we don't know when we're going to get that one. Like I said, that just happened last week. So the things that we're looking at to fund and submit in April would be replace student and staff computers for our capital outlay plan. So those, you did see those in the capital outlay, and so we had planned from the beginning to use this money for that because we know it's allowable. We also want to fund the first year, and probably we'll come back for the second year as well, of the one-to-one device initiative that was discussed last week. We know that we eventually will be requesting money from the New Hanover County Community, I don't know what I'm doing.
That was me.
Get too close. Community endowment. But we expect that funding to be more available in year after next, as the proceeds from that grow. So that is sort of our plan, 2 years from this, and then move it to that if we are awarded that. The other things we're looking at is curriculum purchases at every level. Additional social workers and counselors beyond the ones we added this year. They were only added for 1 year, so keep those and add others to have more mental health support in schools. Any kind of summer school costs. Now this, it's hard to believe I'm saying this, but this may not be all of it because we might actually get an additional grant for the summer school portion. Through the state hasn't had a chance to respond to what they're going to do with their portion yet. So this is just the direct portion. And then, of course, these are really big numbers, and as you know from past conversations, federal grants come with a lot of red tape and a lot of extra hoops to go through, so we are recommending a federal program director and support associate to kind of help coordinate all this. And then, of course, stabilization, as we talked about in the very first slide when we were talking about revenue. If our revenue estimates are wrong and the state takes money away from us, we would be putting positions in federal to be able to sustain those costs until the student numbers come back to the appropriate level. So that is a lot. As I mentioned, we'll be bringing the superintendent's proposal to you next month. If you have any questions in the meantime, just let us know and we can bring that.
Yes, Vice Chair.
Will social workers and school counselors, how are we doing? Are those temporary positions to phase out after the 3 years of funding? Or do we have a plan to make those permanent? Because I do foresee a 10-year need here.
We certainly think that the mental health need is going to be greater in the next 3 years, so I can't tell you exactly what the board's priority would be in the future for that. If you did decide that you don't need as many in the future, or that student growth does not earn you that many in the future, then through attrition you could reduce
But they
that.
won't be advertised as temporary positions.
No, they will be permanent positions, but we have enough attrition that if 3 years, if in fiscal year 25, you didn't want to continue those through attrition, we could. And I think there's going to be this conversation every year between now and then, and we would take the board's direction.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Ms.
So
Craven?
we didn't see anywhere in here about, that will be coming next go-round?
Correct.
Okay.
The final budget. Okay. Anyone else?
Madam Chair,
Mr. McManus?
the ESSER 3 monies,
Mhm.
it says for all permissible use, 20% required to address the running losses.
I couldn't hear you. Say it a little bit louder. I'll go back to my slide and read it. I can't remember what it says.
ESSER 3 left.
Yes, 20% to address learning loss. We don't know exactly what the rules are. That's all we know. But we do believe it's not quite as broad as ESSER 2, but that is the only difference between the two.
Okay.
But how we do that, whether that's more teachers or, how that is recommended to be done, we'll know more soon.
That's got to be a focus area.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms.
Thank you.
Small.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Small.
Look forward to next month's final budget proposal. All right. Next agenda item is the naming of school facilities. I would like to thank Mr. Eddie Anderson for pulling together a historical picture of our facility naming from our schools to our fields and everything in between. That was a very large project for you, and we appreciate you taking a look at how these have been named. As you know, this has been an ongoing discussion up until, I believe it was August of 2020. We approved an updated policy, 5400, for naming or renaming of a school or facility. What we have found is that historically, the naming has been dependent on different locations. We now have a policy in place, but this was an item that Ms. Justice has asked to bring to the board for this month, and so I would like to pass it to her for what you would like to speak on for this item.
All right, well, this is an unfinished business in a sense. It's been going on for probably a year and a half, if not longer. I'm not sure exactly the dates, but about a year and a half ago, there was a petition brought forth by the public with over 4,000 signatures that were gathered within a 3-week period of time, I believe, requesting that the stadium at Delaney High School be changed from the name that's currently on it, which happens to be named after a staff member who was in central office when it was named and actually had some ability to influence the athletic programs in the district, and was asked to have that name taken off. And actually, some people, I believe it was a Buccaneer stadium previously, request was to have it return to its original name. The community definitely seemed to be interested in it for various reasons that I don't even necessarily need to go into after looking at Mr. Anderson's extensive history on it, where everybody's name, the facilities, different parts came from. And after looking extensively at the different research that he did, thank you, as a historian, I really appreciated that, I saw that there was no other facility that we had ever had named that was named after somebody that worked in central office at the time and had the ability to influence programs. So I did some research when the survey first came out, and I know that other people on the board are probably aware of the history of the renaming of the stadium. But apparently what happened was when the principal at Laney was moved to central office and became an assistant superintendent, the Laney Boosters Club was advised by their athletic director at the time that this would be a good thing for the school itself, because literally it was for the self-interest of the school, the decisions coming out of central office would be probably in favor of their athletic program, possibly over others. And this came directly from some people that were in the Boosters Club at the time, that this is how it occurred. So because of that, and the request by the public to return it back to the Buccaneer Stadium, I am making a motion, making a motion now to do just that, to have the stadium at Laney High School return to its original name, the Buccaneer Stadium, And if somebody in the future would like to rename it, go through the process we currently have, and it is a popular name, it's not a geographical name, but it is meaning to the stadium itself, I mean to the people that attend the events there and are part of the community, which I am part of. I taught there all through the 90s. I've had children graduate from there. I actually have right now a freshman attending there that lives with me. So I know it is a good name for the community, and so I'm making the motion that we rename the current Laney Stadium to its previous name, the Buccaneers Stadium.
Miss, before there's a move for a second, Ms. Stagner, are you with us?
Yes.
So, Ms. Justice, I have to apologize. This was not noticed as that specific agenda item. This was noticed as the naming of facilities. So, Ms. Stagner, correct me if I'm wrong. If Ms. Justice would like to move to that, do we need to move that motion to the April meeting to begin the process? Or could you explain the legal ramifications of this, please?
So, as you said, Ms. Adams, the board revised its policy on naming both schools and facilities in last August. And as the policy stands now, a proposal to name or rename a facility will be placed on the agenda as an information item. So I know it seems a little overly technical, Ms. Justice, but I believe that it would be appropriate for that proposal to be placed on the April meeting for an information item that would trigger then the 60-day period in the policy.
And can I, from looking at what was sent to me as far as our different policies, that is in renaming the whole facility. The one that stuck out to me was, sorry, I'm trying to, okay, here it is. Naming or renaming, that's not the one. Sorry about this.
Ms. Justice, look down at the very bottom, the last
Yes, I
paragraph.
found it. Naming school systems facilities within the schools themselves. And it has our policy, okay, here you go.
But it says including but not limited to, and field houses, tracks, gyms.
Right.
That's included in the definition of facility.
Okay, so this is the most current one?
Yes.
The one on naming, let me see here.
So this is the applicable policy, and it was changed to include not just schools, but also facilities, which are individual structures or buildings within a school campus. And so if you will look at the starred items in the middle, the second starred item, the superintendent or designee, or at least 2 board members approve such a proposal, it shall be placed on the board's meeting agenda as an information item. And then that allows time for public input, and the board can act no sooner than 60 days from that date. So this item in particular that's on the agenda for tonight is just an overview of the facility information. But I think a proposal to rename would go on the April agenda.
Ms. Walker.
Well, I think Ms. Justice and I actually wanted this on the agenda about a month ago. So we did first and second for it to be put on the agenda, and for some reason it got put on as a generalized discussion. We did request it.
And that's what I'm saying, is that this was my mistake. And I addressed the wrong item. And so because of that, the March agenda was full. We couldn't get it on there. We said we would do it the interim agenda. And so to fix that, I talked with Ms. Stagner today. It would need to go on for April with the proper wording.
May I ask just a question?
Yes.
It does, since this is an old item that's been on the agenda more than one time, isn't the 60 days already passed for that? Or was there not a specific motion to do this a long time ago?
There would have to be a vote to start the process, and that never occurred.
The 60 days is to allow for the public input and comment.
Well, I know we already have that, though. I thought.
Well, what we would do is we would put a proposed name change on, and then the public would be able to comment on what that name change might be. Buccaneer Field, Bucktown Field, et cetera, The public could offer options.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Stagner, the board would first have to approve that there's going to be a name change.
So in my recollection, and I could be mistaken, but my recollection is that this has come up as a generalized desire to rename the stadium. But there hasn't been, until tonight when Ms. Justice made her motion, I had not heard a specific proposal. So it sounds like there's now a specific proposal for a new name, not just to strip the old name, but to have a specific new name. And so that would be placed on, if the board, puts it on for April meeting and then allows 60 days, and the board could take action on that specific proposal.
So you're saying 90 days from now?
So it would be 60, the vote, so there is no vote to move forward with it. It just is an information item. We open it because I'm trying to go back to what we did with Parsley Elementary, right? Information was brought forward. The board voted to rename Parsley, which then started the 60-day input period for the community for the name.
And the difference with Parsley, was that there was no specific name that the board had, that anyone had proposed. The board opened it up to proposals from the community. So that's certainly something that that the board could do now, but it sounds like Ms. Justice has already made a specific proposal to rename it.
Okay. So that would be, and again, my apologies, Ms. Justice, are you good with this? Would move it to April, and it will have its own item. It would give you the opportunity to present a name and as an actual item.
So, okay, this has been going on for a year and a half. This was one of the emphasis for us changing the policy, and it wasn't even Parsley originally. I remember clearly what brought on our policy name change, and this was the issue that was brought up at the time. And I'm glad it changed because there's a lot of other things that have happened since then that turned out to be advantageous. But I'm confused as to what I just heard. Does this mean that if it goes on the April board meeting, then we have to wait another 60 days to go ahead? So you're talking about 3 months now after a year and a half.
But yes, per policy, yes, it would be 60 days to then vote about the change.
Well, considering the fact that myself and another member had requested that it be put on last month's board meeting, and it wasn't, and you apologize for that, but why don't we waive that, and we can do that as a board, and then start the 60-day now if we approve the idea? And I don't need, well, what if you've got a specific name?
Ms. Justice, I would, you're certainly correct, and I was just going to say the board can waive its policy if, but I would say that because this is a special meeting and the agenda has been posted and notice has been given, that the board ought not to take action that has not been noticed properly to avoid an open meetings law issue. But certainly you could put this on for the April meeting, and if there's a majority of the board that votes to waive the 60 days, the board can waive its own policy.
So we could do that in the April meeting, is what you're saying?
The board can waive policy as long as it's not a statutory or other legal requirement, and this 60 days is something the board has imposed on itself. So the board has the authority to waive that 60-day requirement.
Yes, Mr. McManus.
Chair, are there not other requests for name changes in some other situations?
I have not been privy to those current, I'm not receiving, I don't know.
Are there any other facilities inside a facility that we're going to have to consider also for a name change?
Potentially. I mean, this opens up.
There's a potential, that's the word, I guess.
It opens up a interesting precedence.
This is a very specific request.
Mr. Wildebohr.
I was just going to say, and I'm getting ahead of myself, so I do apologize to the board for that, Madam Chair. But we have, as Ms. Justice said, the group has waited. We have, people here that have waited, for a long time to address this. I think it does need to be discussed for sure. But I also don't want us to start waiving our own policies, because policies are here for a reason. I think 60 days, We've heard from one group, in fact, I read the petition again yesterday, went through each and every one of them. But I think we do need to open it up so we can hear from anybody that wants to talk about it. And I just have a concern if we start saying, well, we're not going to follow our own policy. So that's my thought.
I just want to add that I hope that this is not a further delay of what we all know is coming, which is a vote to rename Laney Stadium back to its original name. I just don't want to keep stalling it just for the purposes of giving people more time or whatever. I feel like we did what we were supposed to do, which was we first and we seconded it like the policy states, and I know it was a mistake, you say, but I just don't want to delay it further. You know, it's something that's the community really cares about. It's something that really needs to be taken care of. And I know we could open up a can, but I don't think that it's going to happen. I just think this is very specific. So I just wanted to add that in public because I know it's something that's been on the minds of a lot of people for a very long time. And there's a petition, a very large one, that probably could have gotten a lot larger. And I just think we need to listen to the public in this regard.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I would offer to go back and research the minutes to find out when this was discussed, if we need to have a date and a timeline, just to, I mean, not this minute, but like you're going to watch.
Oh, no,
I mean, if that information would be helpful.
Well, I'm not even sure, Ms. Stagner, would that be pertinent at this point? Because we brought it, it was brought to us a year and a half, but as I said, I'm not positive about time. And since then, we've all actually gone through the process of changing our policy due to these questions about names. And would that even be relevant to go back and research where it started? I don't, at this point.
I don't know that it would be particularly relevant. I do recall that, I mean, the reason that Mr. Anderson was asked to do this inventory, former board chair asked him to research all of the facility names so that the board would have that information and could decide whether to take any action for facilities that hadn't been named appropriately through the policy as it existed at the time. But it sounds like the board at this point is interested in not sort of doing a across the board change, but looking at a specific item. So I don't know that it would give any additional information to go back and research the minutes at this point.
All right. Yes, Ms.
And if anybody's interested, this was awesome. This was like great reading. And anyway, but I went back and compared all the dates that you had versus what our policy said at the time. And we followed the policy as it was written, is what it appears to me in my journalistic investigation. And so I don't know if that matters or not, but we were following policy at the time, which is unfortunate or fortunate, depending on how you look at it. And then under further, asking around at Laney High, I was a member of the Booster Club, but not at the time that the stadium was named. But the stadium was named in 2005 for Mr. Holliday, Dr. Holliday. So that was way before we even started reviewing it in 2011. So the policy started in 1987, and he, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, he was named in 2005, which was completely in the rights of following our policy. And but our policy was terrible, so I can just say that it had like 4 lines in it.
So what, if it is for the will of the board to add this item to the April agenda with a proposal of, are you going to bring in, you want to propose an actual name for the stadium, not just opening it to the public, for the public's input?
I would like to go ahead and just propose a name for the stadium. We need to, in my opinion, it's very appropriate, but that's my opinion. If the public would like to have an opinion, I guess that's when we'd open it up to the 60 days.
It would have to be 60 days anyway for the policy, Ms. Justice.
Well, what she was saying is we can waive it too. So I'm trying to just, personally, I would like to just get it done. Okay.
I understand the feeling. If we're gonna rename it, we need public input. If we rename it right now, I mean, it's gonna come back and bite us.
Well,
I'm sorry, it is.
So that's something, I mean, if Ms. Justice, think about what you would like to propose for the April meeting, if you want it to be a renaming, or if you'd like it to be a starting the process for renaming. And then we will put it on the agenda as an information item and start the process.
It all needs to be done at one time. Let's do it. Let's give it 60 days. let's hear from the public.
Those are two separate things. You've got whether we should rename it, and then what the
Not
name would
particularly.
be, what the public would be interested in naming it. So what you're saying is, in April, is we'd have the actual vote whether we should rename it, and then have a 60 days. That's what you're proposing.
Correct.
And you're saying we can't have the vote now about renaming it
Correct.
according to how we follow the current policy unless we waived it.
Because I did not notice this item correctly, and that was my
Yes,
mistake.
because we wanted this last meeting, so we could move it along. We've been trying.
Okay.
Okay, so, yes, place it on
All right, Ms. Bowie, if you could add that for our April agenda. Thank you very much. All right, final item for the evening is adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bowyer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone, and happy St. Patrick's Day.